All right, we got Gboyega with us today, all the way from across the pond in London, England. A,
Indeed, indeed.
a good friend of mine going back 15, 20 years, and someone I highly respect is joining us today on the podcast to talk about what the heck he does. And we were just talking offline about how do you create teams and when you're parachuting in and out of companies. And so I'm gonna let Boega introduce himself a little bit and just talk about his background.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. 15, 20, it's nuts. I think it's been about 16, 17 years. That's just crazy. You and I were a lot less gray uh, when we first met. Yeah, so I work as a consultant in London. A lot of my work is running regulatory change and transformation programs for financial institutions. So everything from strategy design specific to regulatory engagement to the execution of large scale change and transformation programs.
So you got
I
you
work
got three you got three beautiful kiddos. Like, what would you tell them? Like, if you had to simplify what it is that you do, what would you?
so that's an ongoing conversation. I think they get it. So they would say that daddy helps people solve problems is the way that they would put it now. But the truth is I'm still trying to figure it out. Every engagement is different. And the thing about being a consultant is, from experience, is you kind of have to. It's different from being like a forensic accountant, where what you're doing is, exactly the same. All it changes is, what who the client is or whatever. But for each role, for each circumstance, for each engagement, you're dealing with completely different variables. And you have to kind of adapt to suit the particular needs and circumstances.
Mhm.
So it keeps it interesting.
Yeah, and it matches that desire and that love of solving problems. What is it about solving problems that's attractive to you?
uh, I just it has an element of it has to be the challenge, right? But you just also just being able to help people, help organizations, and if I can leave a client, to whatever minuscule degree better off after an engagement than before, I parachuted in, that's rewarding for me.
Hmm. The helping people in particular, knowing what I know about you, Boy, I know that's hugely important in your life. And why is that? Tell our listeners why helping others is so important.
Well, so that's a great question. I think over the course of my life, I've realized that life is this is my discovery. I think everyone is on a spectrum. There's a maturity spectrum, if you will. I think that on one extreme end of that maturity spectrum, you have essentially a newborn baby, right? And all a newborn baby has the capacity to be aware of is itself and its own needs. Um, and on the other end of the spectrum uh, is a self is uh, a completely other focused perspective, right? Where the needs of others takes priority over your own, and you're seeking to be a servant, right? And that's the kind of leader. So on one extreme, you have the kind of leader who who wants to take credit for everything and responsibility for nothing. And, on the other end, you've got a leader who is always giving credit to others, but takes responsibility for, things when responsibility needs to be taken.
Yeah. And is willing to take the knives, even when they may not necessarily deserve it as a leader.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talk a little bit about your own personal leadership journey, how you've landed in this spot of, being like a lot of us, sort of self-centered, self-absorbed. I definitely lived there and probably still live there in many ways, too. The being other focused.
Yeah. So I think we're all still there, and it's depending on the day you get me, I'm on closer to one end of the spectrum than the other. So I think like most people, I've come to say that there are lots of different religions, but I think most people are really just self-worshippers. Is a way of putting it. Where we are interested in ourselves. I mean, even look all the buzz terms and all of the fads today. It's all about self-realization, self-development, self-motivation, self. I had an older friend, a mentor, he's passed away now, who used to joke about the self-made man who worships his creator. And I think I unaware of it, I started out that way myself. And so my faith is an important part of my life, and my friendships as well, and through my pursuit of growth in both my faith and my friendships, I've realized that first I realized how self-centered I was, and I came to see this other model of leadership and life, where fulfillment really comes from an other focus, and I'm aspiring towards it. I mean, my wife will tell you that I'm not I'm not perfect, but yeah, that's my faith, and the friendships I've developed that have that have revealed myself to me and have inspired me, have been a big part of shaping that perspective for me.
Yeah, I love this this notion of fulfillment too that you said. You didn't say happiness, which I would equate to nice. It's eight. No, it's what is it? 9 o'clock there now in London. So
yeah, it is 9 o'clock.
I got taking liberties with a little cognac. And if I didn't have to go coach soccer practice in an hour, I probably would too. That it's about fulfillment versus happiness, which I would argue is behind a lot of that self sort of centered focus. That and a lot of things you'll hear people talk about or books talking about, finding happiness, and I think that's a false pursuit, potentially that could lead to a life of actually not finding happiness. So talk about what you mean by fulfillment.
Well, fulfillment is, for me, is rooted in meaning and purpose. There's I find that it's very difficult for me to be engaged, to stay engaged when I don't find meaning and purpose in anything that I'm doing. But the more the further I go on this journey, I get excited to be a part of things that are, I see as bigger than myself. So happiness is an interesting pursuit, and it's probably, there's nothing necessarily wrong with pursuing happiness, but I think that very often we look for happiness. We're obsessed with our happiness, and I found that true happiness, however you want to define it, comes from the things that we do for and with others.
Yeah, it's in providing that happiness to others that we then, at least in my case, find happiness. That the just last 2 weeks ago, my hair used to be quite a bit long, and I wanted to get a haircut, and it's coronavirus, right? So I haven't been to a barbershop since February probably, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just do it myself. And I mentioned that to my kids, and my oldest daughter said, "I'll help you." And so she pulled out the razors and slapped it. I think it was number 3 on there, and now I know what number 3 does. He was about halfway through the center section, and just absolutely screaming with glee. She was so, she thought it was the best thing ever, to be able to cut Daddy's hair like that. And I found myself, at once shocked as I watched the hair fall off, but completely and totally fulfilled, because I was so happy to see her so happy.
Yeah.
It just shows up again and again in my life.
Absolutely.
What have your kids done for you to teach you about this whole topic of fulfillment in life?
Oh man, I'm learning from them every day. I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about I'd say a couple of stories I can tell. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day. We have 3 boys. Our twins are going to be 10 this November, and we have a 4-year-old who turns 5 in December. And I was thinking the other day, so I've got my 9-year-olds so well trained that they know, this is horrible, right? But they know that in particular, that there are moments when they are not my top priority, right? So if I'm on a business call, I'm on whatever, they know that, okay, well, if I go in there, I'm going to get the glare, right? Right, but not so much my 4-year-old, right? I mean, he comes in, he's like, what are you doing that could be more important than me? Which I think is, there's something about that, there's something about that, just there's a purity, there's an expectation he has that, this is my dad. I can go in there and expect him to be there and to engage and to, expect to be his priority, whatever he's doing. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge to me, and I wonder if I've trained the other 2 too well.
Yes. Well, and when you're sort of responding to that with your best self, with the sort of the best version of yourself, the other focused self, the other focused version of yourself, what does that do for you? What happens in those moments?
Well, so I mean, it depends. So there are times, there are situations where the glare might be appropriate. I don't know, but that's not. I find that's actually not necessarily the case. I regardless of what's going on, I can pause, just engage. And if we need to defer what it is that he needs, we can do that. But it is just knowing that I'm implanting and embedding the knowledge in him that I will always be available is a big deal for me. And availability is in all human relationships, availability is a big principle and makes all the difference in relationships. There are people who are there but are never available, but the people who are available, who are engaged, who are with us, who are there, especially leaders who are there. I've had interactions and worked with people who, you knew they couldn't get you out of their office fast enough to go on to the next meeting. And I've worked with people who, in the moment, you were everything they were focused on, and you walked out feeling like you could take on anything, because that's just the kind of leader that they were. It makes all the difference.
Yeah. This 4-year-old is teaching us lessons in leadership, to pause and engage, like you said.
Absolutely.
That's the most valuable gift that we can give each other. And especially as leaders, I would argue the primary job is to build relationships, to get, ultimately get stuff done, right? But if you don't build relationships, then you're not going to be a terribly effective leader. And I'm sure we've all had examples of leaders who did it or didn't do that, and you can see the results. Yeah. I love it. It goes back to everything we need to know in life we learned in kindergarten, right? And he hasn't even started kindergarten. He starts next week. What's it called over there?
Reception. Yeah.
Reception. And what was he in last year?
Just nursery. So we over here we got reception, and then it's year one. In the year you got year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is equivalent of first grade, second grade, third grade, and on and on.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted you to say nursery again, so I could hear it and
Fair enough.
So Gboyega, tell us a little bit about just your background. Where you grew up. How you've gotten to where you are in life.
Sure. So I was my family's Nigerian. I was born over there, and a lot of my formative formative years are in stages, right? So my early formative years were in Nigeria, and I came over to the U.S. for college. So I lived in the States for quite a number of years beyond college, during that period that we met when I was living in the States. And now, my wife, and my family, we live here in England. My wife was born here, she lived here most of her life, and that's the reason why we live here now, because she wanted to be close to her family. And but this is home for us now.
That's awesome. I never thought about this until you just said it, but you said, you kind of caught yourself there and said my formative years, but then you said, well, my early formative years. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that formative, we have formative stages, Right. So just, I mean, just like you said, everything we need to know, we kind of learn by the time we're in kindergarten, and that's true to an extent. But then I think that I probably became a man. Well, I started becoming a man when I lived in the States, and that was another formative period. That was a period during which I learned about myself. I learned about what it means to be in relationship with other people. It was a formative stage for me as well. And but different. We have a lot. I don't know how many formative stages that we have, but I think we probably have several.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what struck me, is that it just occurred to me that we have as many as we want to have, right? That
Right.
as long as we continue on this journey of life and we see it as the next growth opportunity, then everything becomes formative. That you learn more the next year than you learned the year before, and we can do that if we want to, up until we die, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. Um, so, why is that important to you? Why is learning and growing, continuing to form, important to you?
Well, it keeps, I think it keeps life interesting. But I mean, beyond that, I think we are designed um, to grow and to mature, right? Life is all about growing, maturing. There are things that your youngest does now which are kind of cute, which, I mean, if he's still doing those things in 20 years, I mean, yeah. Right, there's going to be a problem. So I think just part of the design of life is that we are constantly growing and maturing in our capacity, in our perspective, in our focus. And for me, I have the 5 areas that I try. I don't do a very good job of this, but I try to be intentional about this. So I think in terms of my resources. So I think of my resources in terms of my time, my economic resources, and my relationships, and I try to focus those on 5 areas that I work on prioritizing, and those 5 are, for me, my faith, my family, my fitness, my finances, and my friendships. So I try to be intentional with focusing those resources on those 5 priorities, and I work on, and the way I've tried to do this has evolved over time, but it's important for me to feel like I'm maturing in every one of those 5 areas, and I like to have a few friends hold me accountable to that, and ask me questions about how I'm doing, and for me it's important that they can be friends who can call my, can I say bullshit on this podcast? You can edit that out if I can't.
Too late. You already did. Yeah, I love that, and I love the the theme of the 5 focus areas being all these consistent um, um, F letter words.
Yeah.
That makes it easy and accessible to constantly, I would imagine, come back to.
Yeah.
Consistently saying, "How am I doing? How am I?
Yeah.
How am I doing each of these 5 areas?"
Yeah. Well, but I mean, even with those 5, I mean, talking about growing and maturing. So a practice that I started was, I kind of wrote out what my vision for each one of those 5 was. So, at the end of my life, what did I want to see or have done in each one of those 5 areas. And I'd have a vision, and then I'd have a goal for the year, which was because there's a huge gap between the vision and my current state, right? So current state, future state, and I'd have a goal for the year, and a plan for those goals. But I found, and this is still evolving. I mean, talking about evolving, and I found that even with that, I was still self-centered in my approach to it. So even for my family and my friendships, all of my vision statements for those 2 categories started with I, and they were about things that I wanted to be doing in my family, I wanted to be doing in my friendships. It was still all about me, right? So I'm going through this process now where it's shifting, and I'm growing. So I'm still trying to get better is a way of putting it, but I like maturing. I'm still trying to mature. I'm still maturing in each of these areas, but even there, I'm seeing the difference between this, self-focus versus other focus, and still seeing even relatively recently my my focus on me. I mean, all my vision statements were I. It's just, it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, which is, I think we could probably all relate to. As you were talking just now, I was thinking about, that's pretty much the same journey that I still am going through. I used to have 3 core values of faith, family, and wealth. Which one of those doesn't quite fit, right? I realized that it really wasn't really about wealth. It was more about providing for my kids and for my wife and for my family, and being a stable force in what can be an unstable world. So they could have the opportunities that I have, and hopefully more. That it was really about their growth. And all of us continue to grow and to improve, and ultimately, grow closer to each other and to God. And it was a huge breakthrough for me to go from, faith, family, and wealth to faith, family, and growth, because precisely what you said, I was able to take the focus off of myself and my own desires. Yeah. Huh. Well, time is flying by here, and I always like to ask, for a book recommendation for other leaders, other maybe young leaders. Like, what's the one book that stands out to you?
This is a tough one. So one is difficult. One is difficult. I'd almost have to kind of think categories, but I think, and not to be cliche, so I talk about faith a lot, but I'm the least. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I don't think of myself as a particularly religious person, right? But for leaders, I think leaders really need to study whatever you think, whatever your faith background or not, or no faith at all is. I think I think everyone should study the life and teachings of Jesus, which are recorded in the 4 books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Bible. So if you had to pin me down to one book, every leader should read, I would say I would recommend that because for me, when I talk about that spectrum from self-focus, where on one end you've got the newborn baby who doesn't even have the capability to think of anything beyond itself, its own needs. For me, what I believe that the person of Jesus is on the complete other end of that spectrum.
And in what ways? Well, how has he shown up in your life?
Well, so I think in different ways. When I was a lot younger, probably in sorry if you can hear that, someone's just set off the smoke alarm in my house.
Do you need to go?
No, it's good. When I was a lot younger, probably in more religious ways, but as I've grown, I've just looked at the person of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, and this is almost when you step back and just read and look at it on its face value, this almost inverse thinking. So he taught principles like, if you want to be great, you don't try to get other people to do what you want them to do and kind of lord it over people. And, that's actually not the way to be great. He taught that the way you actually do that is you become the least, you become the servant. And, as I've observed, I think the most enduring, if you want enduring greatness, that's the way that it's built versus trying to assert yourself over others, which then you have to spend a whole lot of time and energy trying to maintain, which inevitably you won't be able to. So it's in just discovering these principles and trying to test them, experiment with them in my life. That's kind of I'm kind of hooked now. I don't do all of it perfectly by any means, but it's certainly my North Star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would imagine through a continuous searching for that North Star, that you grow closer, that you learn more, that you discover more about yourself and about the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there's obviously many books have been written about the person of Jesus, as you said. Even for those folks out there that may not believe, lots of books, Jesus CEO and others talk about the more pragmatic aspects of his leadership and of his philosophy, that anyone from any faith can learn a great deal from, I think.
Absolutely.
So as you take another sip of your cognac there, Gboyega, maybe wrap us up with, what advice would you offer to leaders out there? You've worked in huge companies, large multinational corporations, and you've worked with some small ones too. So as you think about the power of leadership, and what it's really all about, what advice would you offer to a young leader out there?
To a young leader, I think to a young leader, I would say it all boils down to this focus and what you focus on. If you focus on yourself and your aspirations and where you're going and how the people around you can help you get there, then you're not really leading, right? True leadership is other focused. I mean, there are lots of other things you might be doing, but it's not leading. And your leadership capacity and capability grows with the ability to put the growth, needs, aspirations of others before your own, and to find your fulfillment, as we've said, and growth and development in being able to help others get to the things that they want and need. So that's the muscle that I would encourage young leaders to try to build. And look, it can be a tough journey, but it's certainly worth the work.
Yeah, it's a simple idea to understand, but it's really, really hard to bring to life, but can be transformative literally for your entire life journey. Just that simple change in perspective from focus on myself to focus on others is tremendously inspiring, frankly, and a great reminder for me and for all of us out there that leadership really is about serving others. And you said it so very, very well. So thank you, brother. I appreciate your time. I love you, and I look forward to doing this again next time, and maybe episode 733, and when we're all gray.
That would be awesome. Love you, man. I love that you're doing this. This is awesome.
Thank you.